The formal architecture of the Bangladeshi state presents all the unmistakable hallmarks of a functioning republic. Citizens cast their ballots at designated polling stations, while election officials oversee transparent boxes, completing the physical rituals of civic participation. These ballots and parliamentary sessions mask a structural reality. Beneath the concrete exterior, the system is entirely hollow. Passing the formal administrative tests of a republic does not equal democratic reality. For over a decade, this facade created a critical blind spot for international observers and trading partners. Political scientists classify this modern paradox as a zombie government. A zombie government preserves the outward ritualistic forms of democracy, elections, legislatures, and legal frameworks, while systematically destroying the operational substance that actually limits state power. The Awami League established this regime over 15 years through a calculated two-step engineering process, bypassing the need for a traditional military coup. Combining stealthy institutional capture with modern digital authoritarianism is far more effective and far harder to sanction than a traditional armed takeover. To understand the collapse of Bangladesh's democracy, we have to look at the system's baseline prior to 2011. Since 1996, the country relied on a mechanism known as the Caretaker Government. This diagram illustrates the system's structural blueprint. The Caretaker Government acted as a load-bearing pillar, a neutral arbiter ensuring fairness during election cycles. The democratic collapse began in 2011, when the Awami League completely abolished this neutral mechanism. Legally removing the referee guarantees the ruling party an insurmountable structural advantage before a single vote is ever cast. The immediate consequence arrived during the 2014 election. Recognizing the system was fatally compromised, the primary opposition, the Bangladesh Nationalist Party, refused to participate entirely. This boycott produced a stark mathematical anomaly. Over half of the parliamentary seats in 2014 went completely uncontested. The ruling party won without a single vote cast in those districts, instantly severing the government's electoral legitimacy. By the 2018 elections, the strategy escalated. Observers documented widespread violence, intimidation, and active ballot stuffing, rendering the entire process farcical. Yet, despite the complete lack of mathematical competition, the physical branding and rituals of campaigning still blanketed the country to maintain the visual illusion. Holding uncontested, predetermined elections no longer measures public will. It simply simulates legal continuity to satisfy the baseline requirements of international trade. Electoral rigging is insufficient for long-term survival. For a captured state to endure, its independent fact-checkers and legal organs must also be neutralized. Look at the state's oversight network. The Awami League initiated a process of institutional capture against independent branches like the Judiciary and Election Commission. Through targeted pressure, these arbiters transformed from constitutional checks into weaponized extensions of executive power. This total hollowing out of independent oversight completes the core zombie phase, leaving civil society with no legal recourse when the state oversteps. To enforce this newly captured state, the regime required modern tools, primarily the 2018 Digital Security Act, or DSA. Ostensibly passed to fight cyber threats, the DSA weaponized deliberately vague language to criminalize journalistic criticism and suppress public dissent. Following intense international pressure, the regime replaced the DSA with the 2023 Cybersecurity Act. Human rights advocates classified the new law as merely cosmetic, as it retained the exact same repressive architectural capabilities and the power to jail critics. The legislation authorized a broader infrastructure of digital control, including targeted monitoring of social media and mass website blocking. During protests and critical election cycles, the state engineered targeted internet shutdowns to strategically blind the opposition and sever their ability to organize. Grave modern techno-dictatorships engineer a pervasive atmosphere of fear, weaponizing information control to force the public into self-censorship. Advanced digital control networks ultimately require the threat of physical force to function. When digital suppression fails, the state transitions to kinetic space. Reports document the state's systemic reliance on extrajudicial measures, including a documented pattern of enforced disappearances and state-sanctioned abductions used as political intimidation. The kinetic instruments of this control were elite paramilitary units, primarily the Rapid Action Battalion, which operated with near-total impunity. By frequently jailing prominent opposition figures on fabricated, politically motivated charges, the regime successfully decapitated physical political resistance in the streets. Brutal physical violence remains the necessary, hidden foundation required to enforce the regime's clean digital and legal facade. The Awami League's completed architecture represents a simultaneous merger of 20th century institutional capture and 21st century digital surveillance. The combination of digital security laws and the criminalization of dissent allowed the state to operate as a de facto fascist regime domestically. By maintaining the empty rituals of voting and parliamentary sessions, the regime successfully projected an image of democratic legitimacy to international observers and economic partners for a decade and a half. As we have seen in Bangladesh, the true death of a democracy occurs quietly and deliberately, hidden away behind locked institutional doors.